Hello, today I'm here with Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul is one of my role models in the blockchain world. I met Dr. Paul in last Ethereum Dublin 2023, and Dr. Paul, you had broken a lot of myths in the Bitcoin and Ethereum space. So it was an incredible chat that I had with yourselves, and that conversation that we had was very enlightening for me to understand the concepts of Bitcoin, this history, and Ethereum, and the comparisons that you had given us last time when we had a chat. So, Dr. Paul, we are curious to know what's currently going on in this space. Would you like to share some key trends currently happening in blockchain world, Bitcoin, Ethereum that you are very concerned about or passionate about?
Probably the biggest developments, and I remember talking to you last year about this is a new development, but I think at this point is very well established, is probably the idea of layer twos and rollups. So these are effectively mini versions of Ethereum where you can bridge your assets over and you can then do all the things that you would normally do, send Ether assets to each other, interact with DAOs, DeFi, NFT, except the main benefit is that on a rollup, transactions are extremely cheap. So 0.004 ETH, something like that. Basically free, or as close to free as you can get. And right now, so even the last few talks that have been at this event were very much focused on layer twos and rollups. And that's probably the biggest trend I notice at events. So I was at Blockchain Ireland Week and then here as well. The main topic for people now is less so Ethereum layer one, as it would now be seen as, and more an emphasis on rollups. That's where the excitement is. So if you're like a young person looking for a way to make a name for yourself, then definitely rollups or layer twos is the way to go. And also on the Bitcoin front, there's a robust NFT community, which is something would have been unimaginable even 1 or 2 years ago. So yeah. So I mean, Bitcoin is very much designed to do one thing and one thing well. At least traditionally, a very conservative approach to development. And there has been a culture of Bitcoin maximalism, so people who are very interested in the idea of Bitcoin not being complicated because complications might lead to issues around security. So that's how the Bitcoiner tends to think. But that's been overturned by people who first of all, they discovered a way to put NFTs in Bitcoin. So ordinal theory is where you take a very, very small amount of Bitcoin called a Satoshi, so like the smallest amount, and then this basically gets associated with the image and it's stored on chain, which is actually better than what happens on Ethereum, where usually it's a link to not to on chain. It's most Ethereum NFTs are not on a blockchain at all. They're on an associated service. That's a whole different sort of story. So yeah, that's the major developments there. I think in Ethereum, just to go back to Ethereum, I'd say the major developments are also around staking and restaking. It's getting very complicated. I'm sure people who listen might have heard of EigenLayer. So that's where you're taking staked ETH and you're using that staked ETH to secure other protocols other than Ethereum. So it's getting even more complex, which may or may not be a good thing. And then for most people, probably the most exciting development is the meme coins, what I would call degen culture, where all of this technical innovation that I'm talking about doesn't matter, and really all people care about is just creating a very simple meme and hoping they get rich in a very direct way.
You have mentioned that the staking and restaking is becoming challenging on Ethereum. Sorry about it. Okay. On Ethereum platform, is it where we are seeing things getting complex?
I mean, it's a really, really complicated issue in general. So, I mean, the basic idea behind so staking is what secures Ethereum, the same way mining secures Bitcoin. So it's the equivalent of mining Bitcoin is staking in Ethereum. And the way that there's been some unintentional consequences of that. So staking is supposed to be a situation where someone has 32 ETH, they put the 32 ETH up as collateral. If they behave well and they keep the blockchain running, then they earn rewards, more or less. And then if they act badly, they can lose it. So that's the stake that they're putting up. So the stake is, it's very similar to collateral in like the traditional world. Now, what people then discovered is 32 ETH is a lot of money. It's around 100,000 US dollars, so it's not very accessible. So then they introduced this idea of restaking. So basically you can get if you can use a protocol like Lido or Rocket Pool, where you will give, say, 1 ETH, and then they will pool that together, and then that will become like a liquid staking token. So now you've got a new type of token. So you've got staked ETH on top of like traditional ETH as well, and that's becoming a fear. And one of the big fears in Ethereum development at the moment is there may be a possibility where all Ethereum is staked or all Ether is staked. So it's not circulating in the economy. And then what's actually being used, what becomes the new ETH, is the staked ETH. And then there's also an even more complicated version of liquid restaking tokens, where they take the stake tokens. So you can sort of see how this is going. It's just increased complexity is one of the dangers of or fears that people have at the moment.
And in your own space in the research, what is the challenge or a problem that you're trying to solve at the moment with your students?
Not necessarily with my students. I think with my students, it's always very much I definitely, my teaching leads my research in a way, because what I'll typically do is a class is coming up, and then there's certain things that I need to learn about, and most people, you can basically say to yourself, well, I'll just put it off, I'll just leave it, I won't learn about it, or one day I'll learn about what Solana is or something. But if you're teaching, you have an excuse. You need to come up with a lecture, so you can force yourself to learn topics, and that's basically how I learn myself. So the teaching actually becomes how I force myself to learn about topics. And I am introducing more of my own research into the classroom, which is research about, so my specific area of specialization is Ethereum governance. So the core developers who actually are responsible for maintaining and managing the Ethereum protocol. That's my focus, and especially their research, their cultural values. So what kind of cultural values allow them to understand where the lines are around decentralization, centralization, what kinds of behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable to the community. When do they stray from being neutral to maybe possibly misaligned? So that's my current focus.
And then, Dr. Paul, so what blockchains are doing really good now at this point? Solana, AVAX, 8, Bitcoin. So
Bitcoin's always doing well. Bitcoin is an asset that at this point is, I would say, pretty unshakable. I mean, it's in that #1 position. It's the original. Its community is very strong, and now it's even got an interesting additional community. So the new ordinals NFT community that's being added there, which just makes it more exciting. And those are people who would never have been involved in Bitcoin ever. So they're people that are coming in from Ethereum and Solana. So Bitcoin's doing great. It's got its ETF, so it's got its exchange-traded fund. So it's now a legitimate asset that your grandmother could buy with her financial advisor. So that's where Bitcoin is. And Ethereum, very similar situation, also got its ETF maybe 1.5 weeks ago. So that news didn't make as much of a splash because Bitcoin had already done it, I guess. But Ether is now in the same situation as Bitcoin. I think it's very firmly established itself for most people as the major DApp platform. And now the Rollups as well have become this exciting new frontier. So Ethereum and its rollups. That's an interesting thing for Ethereum, that you're now more talking about its rollups as opposed to like just directly Ethereum itself. But for the people who maybe aren't so ideologically driven, like the Bitcoin maximalists, the Ethereum people with their like values, etc., Solana, I think, has become the other option. So if you're not interested in decentralization or credible neutrality or permissionless, it's all the old school values, I guess, and you just want something that works fast and cheap, then Solana seems to have cornered that market pretty much. So in my eyes, that's the degen chain, and it's also demographically young. So young people like Solana, and I noticed this in my classroom, they have an interest in it. So I've been avoiding Solana for many years, but my students are making me do it, which is a good thing.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for sharing these insights with us.